Hey guys, we are back on the My Sugar Free Journey podcast, and I am here today with Jennifer Alembik. So Jennifer I've talked on these podcasts in the past about how there are certain topics within the health world that I think get short shrift. And so as I'm kind of trying to find people that I can talk to intelligently about these subjects, I found one on food addiction, because I think food addiction is one of those ideas that doesn't get talked about enough, especially in the low carb keto world, because we're like, just don't eat sugar, don't eat grains, don't eat polyunsaturated fats, and go on your way. Well, it's one of those ideas that's really good in theory. But the actual practice, the actual day-to-day practice for some people is incredibly difficult, especially, you go to work and they've got birthday cake in the break room and they've got donuts, and they're asking you to walk past these temptations every day. And you could do it great for a week. You can do it great for even a month. But to do it for the years and years it takes to regain your health, to lose the weight, to do the things that you're trying to do, that's a different animal, I think. And I've told the joke before about me, is that I can eat 0 donuts or I can eat all the donuts. But the idea of eating one donut and then walking past the other 4 that are on the plate, you might as well be asking me to jump over mountains. It's just impossible. So Jennifer Alembik is here today to kind of go over her views on that, and she's here for me to pick her brain, and I can't wait to have this conversation. So Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great introduction.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And I want to get into, just so my people have some context, who you are, what you're about. Can we go over your background and then how you kind of got to this place?
Yeah, well, I'm a certified professional coach and I specialize in food addiction. I am definitely a specialist in that area, based on my own lifelong journey with food and the unhealthy relationship I had for food for decades. I started out really young with my relationship with food. I loved sugar and I was seeking it at an early age. Right. I grew up in a very tumultuous home, and food was my comfort at a very early age. My first diet was in 10th grade. And that really started the whole yo-yo, going up and down and up and down. And my dad I had a lot of shame about my weight. I could tell he was embarrassed by my weight. I wasn't like the other cute, skinny girls that his friends' daughters had. And, chubby all my life. And this is a progressive illness. It didn't get better for me. I just got bigger and bigger. I've been over 200 pounds. I don't like the scale, so I can't really tell you how much I weighed, but I was definitely over 200. I went to treatment when I was 21 for food addiction. And that was the first time that maybe I realized they called it at that time a compulsive overeater, and I identified with that, because I was a binger and I was using food to calm me and to fill me. And as it progressed, I needed the food. It was no longer that I wanted it. I needed it to get through the day and to function. And it was like I had to have my hit to move on, just as if I was a drug addict. It was the same type of behavior. And, so I went to treatment when I was 21. They did get me off sugar, but the problem was they didn't get us off flour. And being a compulsive overeater and a binge eater, if I'm going to sit down and have 3 bagels, well, that's going to turn into sugar in my body. And then it just set me up. So I was back on the same track for decades. Miserable, overweight, dieting up and down. I put shots in my belly. I took pills. Whatever I could do in order to lose the weight, but it never lasted. I always gained the weight back plus. So I kept dieting up and getting heavier. Finally, and I think everybody has to get to this point where you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I woke up on my 45th birthday and said, I'm miserable. I was 200 pounds. I was in an unhealthy marriage, and I knew that I was so far off the path that I feel God had intended for me, because my whole life revolved around food at this point. When I could get it, when I was going to get it, around my kids. I would drop them off, come home. And it was all, my whole life revolved around food. So I knew that if I was going to change anything in my life, it had to start with the food. I had to get it under control. I didn't know what that looked like at the time, but I knew that I had to do something. And I came across a program where they taught me that I was allergic to sugar and flour.
That's interesting.
I had a physical allergy.
Right.
And when I put sugar and flour in my system, it set up a mental obsession followed by a physical allergy, or I don't know which comes first, but all of a sudden I am obsessing about food and I want more and I'm just eating.
Yep.
So that was new to me. I had gone to all the doctors. I had been on all the diets. I've never heard that I had a physical allergy to sugar and flour. And that really was the answer for me. Now, like you said in your introduction, the hardest thing is putting it down.
Right.
And I've put it down for over 5 years now. And every day is a new day. But every day, my mantra is I don't eat no matter what I don't eat. I follow my food plan. It doesn't include sugar and flour, and I'm good to go. I have a full, beautiful, blooming life because my life no longer revolves around food and getting it.
Perfect. So some of your story really resonates with me. For me, I was 40. So I was 40 years old, and I looked and I realized I was 400 pounds. My blood pressure was crazy, crazy high, and I knew I needed to make a change. Didn't know what that change was, and those were really the kind of the first steps along my journey. And that's so important, that before the physical, it's the mental, that you've got to make that mental change. You've got to make that determination, and then the physical has to follow so close, because you can't keep up the willpower for the years and years and years that you need to do it. You've got to detox. You got to get that stuff out of your system. And just like an alcoholic, once they dry out, they can't ever go back. They can't ever have a sip of whiskey or whatever with friends, because that's going to lead them to a dark place. And that's the same thing that I see with sugar. You just can't have a little bit or a little flour I guess I should back up. For certain personalities, I think there's some personalities out there that can moderate, that can have the donut and be fine. But man, that's not me, and that's not a lot of the people that I know that used to be 400 pounds or hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Those people need to abstain, and I'm including myself in that category. You just need to be done with it and be done with it and not go back. And I think that's
I'd like
probably
to make an important distinction here.
Yeah.
Which I can't have one bite of anything either. I can't have a bite of a donut or an ice cream cone and be good. But the spectrum of food addiction is so large. And you're right, there are people that have bits of it but can moderate. But it really doesn't have to do with size. And that's the important thing. Food addiction has to do with the mental obsession about food. There are many people that I know and that I've worked with, that I've coached, that maybe have 20 to 30 pounds to lose, but have battled this issue with weight their whole life. The whole going back, they have a slice of pizza and they spend an hour and a half beating themselves up for it, then running to the gym for 3 hours to work it off. Right. So weight isn't necessarily an indicator of food addiction. It usually is. I mean, if somebody's 400 pounds, you have a food problem.
Right.
But there are many people who are not obese, but suffer mentally from the mental obsession of body dysmorphia and food addiction and all exercising and all sorts of the eating disorder gamut that we suffer with, that falls under the umbrella of addiction.
So let's go over some of the basics real quick. How would one of my listeners be able to determine if they were addicted to food?
That's something that they have to determine. Can they have a bite of something and walk away and not still think about it? Not
Right.
obsess about how many calories they gained or what they're doing. Um, do they talk about their weight? Are they always worried about it? You have to really pay attention to your thoughts and your thinking about food. Some
Mhm.
people have a very healthy relationship. Most of America does not, I
Yeah.
would say, but that's not our fault. We have been programmed via media and advertising for certainly my whole life, your whole life, about food, and that we get these mixed messages that food is joy and it's love and it's peace. But then so is dieting. That's joy and feeling great and
Right.
feeling love. So you have this mixed message all over the place. So I think we don't have a healthy perspective as Americans about food. But I think, it's really a personal thing that you have to diagnose. Does it cause you pain and discomfort when you overeat or when you eat certain foods? If it does, that shouldn't be. That's an indicator that something might be off.
Right. That was one of the things that I noticed when I would eat things that are on the list for keto, like certain kinds of nuts, and I wouldn't, sometimes I had a hard time really tracking down what it was. My knee would hurt. Like that would be the indicator. My right knee would hurt. It would feel inflamed. It's like, oh, I bet this was cooked in peanut oil or something. Something that I wasn't. So maybe a polyunsaturated fat or something. So,
Right.
yeah, that's when you start taking some things out of your diet, you can begin to see the effects of the other things that you're actually eating on your food, and it's not just all static. You can actually get some signals from your body. I think that's an important thing.
Nuts are a total binge food. I mean, they're
Yeah,
legal. I'm allowed to have them, but I can't touch nuts. Are you
right.
kidding me? I can't touch olives. I'll eat a whole can. You do have to be honest with yourself. And there are foods that for me are legal. They don't have sugar and flour, but I don't go near them
Right,
because I know that I'm going to eat the whole bag or the whole can.
right.
So I just stay away. There are certain foods that I know I stay away from. I keep my diet very simple.
Yeah,
That's the one thing I would like to mention. Keto, if it works for you, that's fantastic. I am a big advocate for whatever you find working for you. The thing with food addiction, though, that we have to be very careful with is we obsess and we obsess about food. And
right,
diets like keto give you recipes. And I just posted something, I saw a post about Keto's Twix bars. There is nothing healthy about keto Twix bars.
right,
But America, because of the way we've been programmed by media and advertising, we think, yes, I can make a prototype of that donut or that candy bar, and it's going to be healthy for me. And that's BS.
right.
It's not healthy for you. It's unhealthy for you. So the reason why when I work with my clients, I keep it very simple and we stay away from recipes. So we're not in the kitchen fondling our love and
Right.
fondling our food and getting all personal with it again when it really needs to be treated just as food that keeps me healthy, keeps me vibrant, gives me medicine for my body so I can go out and live my life.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's so powerful that the we talk about muddy creek banks, that it's hard to play around muddy creek banks and not fall into the river. And think a lot of these recipes they're just muddy creek banks. They're gateways to a place that you used to be, that you're not anymore, and that you don't ever want to be again. And for some people, it might be the best thing to do is just stay away from. So that's very good. All right. So we talked about somebody that might have food addiction. What's the next step once they make that determination? Oh, I might be addicted to this food. What's the next step?
Well, you have to draw some hard lines, and I always say you've got to create some non-negotiables.
Right.
If you are to heal and to get better and to move forward and to let go of this issue with food, you've got to have non-negotiables. And, for me, my non-negotiables are no sugar and flour, there's no cheat days, and I weigh my food because my eyes are broken, 4 ounces. What are you kidding me? That fills a cavity. So I want a lot. So I do weigh my food. So those are my non-negotiables. But let's say somebody can eat a certain food, but there's certain foods that they know they can't, even though they love them. They've got to draw a line and say, I no longer eat that.
Yeah.
That particular food. And if it's carbs is your issue, then don't eat carbs. Draw a line in the sand. And don't make excuses for it, and don't make cheat days. There's no such thing, because once you put it back in your system, you set up the cycle and you're right there. It doesn't matter how long or how far. Some people say, your brain resets in 2 years and your body resets. It's BS, not for an addict, because you still have that memory, you still have that brain path in there. And the minute you feed it, it will go off.
Yeah, I read a study here not too long ago that said that, fat cells in particular, because your body's always replacing cells, that fat cells take 10 years to recycle, that every 10 years you get a whole new set of fat cells. And I thought, if the hormones that are driving my appetite live in the fat cells, and a lot of them do, then it would take 10 years just to reset that one part of the equation. Then it's not even the mental part. This is just, a little bit of the hormonal, a little bit of the physical things that are going on. And so I think the scale of time that it takes to heal is much longer than what most people realize. I think the body can heal, but boy, I think it takes a lot longer, especially when you're trying to undo damage that happened in the first 10, 15 years of life, when so much, you're like wet concrete. And as you get older, it starts to set in place, and it's hard. I mean, it's really, really difficult to undo the things that happened to you as you were a kid.
But you can. We're seeing with science and the medicine of food that we can reverse a lot. But I think you brought up a good point that it takes a long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. And the problem, again, with part of our societal training is you lose the weight, you're done with the diet, you're good.
Right.
And people are just going up and down and up and down. I read somewhere a fact that there are like over 500 and something diets. Like what? Or 5,000. Like it was some ridiculous number. And, when are we as a culture going to realize as people, diets don't work? If they did, we would have stuck to one, and that would have been the end of it. You really have to make a commitment. It's a life change, and you have to want it. And it's one day at a time. And like you said, it is very hard. And that's why you must have support. You cannot do this journey alone. You have to have a support system. You have to have cheerleaders. You have to have people around you that are walking the same path, because it is not easy to go to work some days and you see what's in the break room and you walk by it and the smells are going and you choose not to partake because you know it's unhealthy for you. But that's hard to face day in and day out. So if you have people to call or to write or to text and say, wow, today was tough, and you get that support, knowing that you're not alone, that is a tremendous help through this journey of life.
There are a few things that smell better in the grocery store than fresh baked bread. Boy, that's a tough one to walk past. So I want to talk more about the support aspect of it. But before I do that, you mentioned that you weigh your food. I want to get in on that for a minute, because so there's someone that I follow that I really like, that I really respect. He's in the low carb world, and he's 320 pounds. He's huge, but he's in the low carb world, and he's been there for a decade or more. And he'll put on his Instagram that what he's eating for the day, because he's starting a carnivore. He started a carnivore experiment a couple months ago, and I'm fascinated by his Instagram, because his Instagram shows, oh, this is what I'm eating for dinner, and it's like 3 ribeyes and 2 huge scoops of pimento cheese, and I'm looking at this going, how in the world? How can that fit? Yeah.
He's still in the addiction. He is stuffing his face and getting that, as food addicts, we love that satiated feeling of being ultra full.
Oh,
We
so
go
full,
for that,
right.
right?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
crave that. He's still doing it. So I
Yeah.
don't care. That's why food addicts must weigh their food. Our eyes are broken. It's
Yeah.
never enough. I can't, like I'm good sometimes at doing 4-ounce, 6-ounce, 8-ounce, but I've got to weigh it.
Yeah.
And that keeps the boundaries around my food. And
Yeah.
because I have those boundaries and those non-negotiables, I get to live free and clear, and I get to go and enjoy, and I am in a healthy, right-sized body. Never, ever thought in my whole entire life that I could ever be this thin. Was never a possibility or in the realm of my possibility.
Right.
But and another point I'd love to bring out, because you talked about the science and what's in the genes. And there is a tremendous amount of science that is coming out right now. And we're talking about microbiomes, and we're talking about gut health, and we're talking about the amygdala and what's going on in there, and all this science. And it's all well and good, but it doesn't mean crap to a food addict when you're sitting down to dinner with a group of people, right? You're not going to think about your gut lining when you're eating.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, the information is so overwhelming that I really think as a society, we're so dazed and confused. Like, what are we supposed to eat? What are we not supposed to eat? They don't even know anymore. So what I do is I don't pay attention anymore to any of the diets, nothing, because I know I eat a very well-balanced food plan. And I don't have to worry whether I'm eating the right amount or I shouldn't be eating this, I should be eating this. I've been doing this for 5 years, maintaining my weight completely. What better way to live? That's what we're all looking for. How do I live life, maintain weight, and enjoy and have happiness and get to be with my kids and get to play on the floor and go to the beach and get in a bathing suit and do all those things that might not be a possibility for some.
Exactly. I'm an ex-pastor, so there's a verse in the Psalms that always comes to mind when I'm discuss things like weighing your food, and it says the boundary lines for me have fallen in pleasant places, and it's this idea that there are no-go areas, there are boundaries that I've set, but I've set them and they've fallen in pleasant places, that they're good boundaries, that they're things that I set for myself, for my health, for that give me the maximum amount of freedom, but protect me from the maximum amount of danger. That's what a good boundary does, and that's what a good that's why good fences make good neighbors. Is that you've got you've got a hard line that you're not going to pass. So that's powerful.
Yeah, but addicts have a hard time setting boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just don't.
That's why they're even more important for an addict.
Exactly. We must draw those hard lines and set them up. And, part of, when I work with my clients, I set up all those boundaries and that accountability with them, so they start to learn and live this way of life. It's not a diet. This is a way of life, one day at a time, one meal at a time.
Right. That's, Carl Jung said that the thing that you most need to find is always in the place where you least want to look. Because you've looked everywhere you want to look, and if you've looked everywhere you want to look and you haven't found the answers that you need, then the answer is where you least want to look. And if where you least want to look is weighing your food, if the place that you least want to go is setting hard boundaries on your food, then that's where the answer is for you, and that's where you need to go to figure out the next place that you need to go.
I love that.
Yeah. So support. So this is another thing that I don't think I think it's short shrift in our community, that it's the having people around you, even if it's an online community, which I've seen be very, very powerful.
Yeah.
People that you never see face to face, but that you talk to constantly. This online support is key. It's crucial. It's so important. So talk to us a little bit. How do you do that in your practice? What does that look like, and how is it set up?
Well, with my clients, we have private Facebook groups, but I do have a food addiction forum on Facebook where I allow people in. But here's what I found. And yes, I believe support is so important, and it's wonderful if you can find it. But there are many popular food sites that I see and I don't agree with at all. And the reason why is they perpetuate the sickness. They commiserate with one another. Oh, I was doing so well and then I broke tonight and I had this and that and the other thing. Oh, don't worry, honey, tomorrow's another day. I did the same thing. And they're holding hands together while they're all drowning. And that to me is not a support. So in food addiction forum, I post a lot about, what goes on in my personal life and how I handle my abstinence and how I handle difficult situations, and people share as well. But I tell people, like, enough with there's a fine line between being gentle on yourself with your food slips and using it as an excuse to continue to the destructive cycle. There is a very fine line. And if you don't have somebody holding you up to that mirror, you're just you stay that way for decades. I did it. I lived that way. Oh, it wasn't so bad. And oh, I did good for 3 days. Maybe I'll do better next time. And constantly giving myself permission to screw up instead of saying, I will no longer do this.
Right.
So you have to find a community that is all doing and walking the same path, not a community that's rubbing each other's back saying, it's okay, don't worry, we're here for you, sister. That's really nice, but you're not getting healthier.
Right.
So that's what I've experienced on the online world. Or it's totally geared toward weight loss and they're not taking into account the thousands of other things that go along with addiction. The crazy thinking, the mindset, the boundaries. I have my clients do a whole morning routine I get them set up on, and a night routine. Like, you really have to change your way of living to sustain weight loss and the pull of addiction to food, because unlike any other drug, food is everywhere. It is accepted everywhere, and you can get it at any time. That's not the same with alcohol or drugs. So it's a different breed we have to face every day. So
when you have someone in one of your groups that says, "Oh, I slipped up yesterday," or whatever, how do you approach that person?
What I say, you just get back on the horse. You get right back on. Don't allow this to get on there. But somebody shared just yesterday, like, I went away and I had a really hard time, and I said, look, if you're going to get off sugar, and if they choose not to, that's okay. I just be the example. If you want to follow, that's great. But I say, understand that you are going to be uncomfortable as you're getting off the sugar, because this person has been off sugar before. So just know, even just physically, mentally acknowledging that it's going to be uncomfortable for a couple of days until you get back into your groove, and I support them that way. I mean, I'm always there with loving support and whatever, but be careful with the whining and somebody to kick you in the ass and tell you the truth, because who tells you the truth in the real world?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is why I think support is a key aspect. If you try to go at it alone, I had this one lady that she was determined to do it, but her family wasn't. So she kept, like, the Lucky Charms and the Pop-Tarts, whatever, in the pantry for her family. I was like, you might as well just give up now. There's just no way you're gonna have any level of success. I mean, I did my best to coach her through it, but that poor girl,
some people are not strong enough, but I got abstinent with 3 kids in the house. They were 6, 8, and 13 at the time. So I had snacks, but what I did was, what I suggest to all my people is you get a drawer or a cupboard that is their stuff. And I put my kids' snacks in the garage. That's where
good.
They were able to go get their snacks. So it wasn't in my view. So it wasn't in my face. And as a family, we started eating healthier and better together. Mm-hmm. And, it's really not an issue today for me to be around the food, but I keep minimal and the snacks are still in the garage,
Good.
There are ways and there is ways, but you know what? You've got to want it.
Right.
You've got to want it. And if she wanted it, because I've coached plenty of people who have families and maybe not the most supportive spouse, because they don't like the change. But when your health is on the line,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be willing to do the work. This is not easy work. It's not an easy journey, but it is the best damn journey you will ever take. And I'm not just talking physically. I'm talking emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I mean, you were an ex-pastor. How much, by putting the food down, how much would you say your spiritual life has blossomed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, when you take one thing that you're obsessed about out of your life, other things can fill that void. Other thoughts, you can think on things and not have them, not have them colored by your what you're going to eat in the next meal. I mean, it's definitely there's definitely something to that.
But your whole life up levels.
Yeah.
All your relationships get better because you're present and you're able to nurture them. I mean, your whole life up levels. It's not just about the weight. That's a great side effect.
Mm-hmm. But
the things that you're about to encounter by changing and living this way of life is beyond anything you can imagine. I always tell my clients that.
Absolutely. So would you mind giving us, without naming anyone, of course, maybe a few case studies that, people, difficult things that, difficult problems that came up in your practice, and then how you kind of handle that and had some level of breakthrough?
I think everybody hits the wall eventually. They come in, they're really excited.
Right.
I have a woman that I worked with, I'm still working with, over 300 pounds, over 350 actually, when I started with her. And she started to lose the weight and she was feeling great. And, as addicts, it's like Pop-A-Mole. We put one thing down and we pick something else up. And the thing she picked up was men. And it was in an unhealthy way. And it took continuing coaching, continuing, keeping her clean and clear about the food plan, how she was using it just as she used the food, and how that it was a very unhealthy dynamic. This wasn't a loving, kind, wonderful relationship. She doesn't even know how to be in a relationship. She's in her late 40s and never had a boyfriend because she's been obese her whole life.
Right.
So that is to watch her walking through this and to really living life, showing up for life, showing up for the job instead of calling in sick or avoiding canceling when she had to do a presentation because she doesn't want to be seen. These are the things that food addicts and obese people really deal with that we don't talk about. We don't talk about the truth, about it's really uncomfortable to walk into a room or even to wipe their butt, to get around their butt when it's so big. How do you wipe that? I mean, it's embarrassing. There's a tremendous amount of shame that comes with this disease. And I know I don't need to explain it to you, being over 400 pounds. And I didn't have to be 400 pounds to experience that shame. I know it. And we must be able to talk about it, because if you don't, your shame will bury you.
Yep.
The more we speak about shame, the more it lessens immediately. It goes from, you can walk in at 100% shame. And if you share a shameful incident, you bring it down to about 20%. And we have to be able to, there was a time where I would never, ever share that I was a food addict or that I had a food issue. Nobody knew around me. I wasn't talking about it because I was so embarrassed. Nobody knew how uncomfortable I was in my body, how I hated getting up in the morning, hated to get dressed because nothing ever fit the way I wanted it to. I wanted to look in the mirror and be 5'11" and a size 4. That wasn't going to happen at 200 pounds and 5'5". So we have to talk about the shame. That is the underbelly of this disease.
Absolutely. So a joy shared is a joy multiplied. But
I'm sorry, what?
I was saying a joy shared is a joy multiplied, but a misery shared is a misery divided. So we were designed to be with other people, and so that's good.
But a lot of food programs, they never do. They only deal with the food. And let me tell you, when it comes down to it, a food is a small portion of the whole picture of addiction. why are we using, not only do I have a physical allergy, but what was I born into? How do I use food to cope in this world? We used it as a coping mechanism. So when you take away that food, how are you coping? What are we replacing it with? You know, what tools do you have in your toolbox to go out into the world, to perform the job, to show up at work, to be the manager or the chief or the Indian, whatever you are, to do the best that you can in this world, to show up and be a parent, hardest job in the world.
Yep.
How do we do that without using food?
Absolutely. Well, this was a fantastic interview. If you could do me a favor and tell my listeners where they can find out more about you, what you're all about, where they can follow you on social media, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I would love for you guys to follow me on social media. You must know how to spell my last name, and it is Alembik. A-L-E as in Edward, M as in Mary, B as in boy, I, K as in King, Jennifer Alembik. So you can follow me at Jennifer Alembik Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. Go ahead and join my Food Addiction Forum on Facebook. And if you want to check out my website and you're interested in working with me, just go to jenniferalembik.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, guys, we're going to put links to all of that in the show notes, and you can find all that at mysugarfreejourney.com/podcast. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been an honor.
All right. Thank you so much. Guys, we'll be right back with some more information.